So let's take a look at what Jen Psaki said yesterday about the president addressing this crisis of the supply chain bill. She said, hey, y'all have only been talking about this for a little while, but we've been working on this for a long time. Listen to this.
He's been working on these issues for months. I mean, I know it's been up in front in the news in the last few weeks, but these are issues the president's been focused on since he took office.
So that begs the question then, Bill, if he's been working so diligently on this, why are things getting worse and not better?
It's a fair question. We'll see how she addresses it at the briefing coming up a bit later this hour, John. I think a couple things are at play here. One is the consumer, what Madison was reporting on. It's obvious when you're paying more for food and gasoline. I mean, it's obvious when your money goes a lot less further than it did before. If you got a raise in your job, well, that raise is now being eaten up by inflation every day. I think the second factor is what happens to the Biden agenda on this, John. You're living in Washington. You know that these two giant bills were put on the shelf. And I think anytime that happens, you really start to invite a danger from the outside. And the danger now is that the media has turned its attention to another issue, and that is the supply lines and ultimately the issue of inflation. So now you're asking Congress to pass these massive spending bills that total trillions and trillions of dollars. When the media turns its attention to issues like we just watched here now with gasoline, you start to ask yourself, well, do you want to go forward with these massive bills? And already Nancy Pelosi is talking about paring these bills down. We'll see whether or not they pass in the end or what kind of size they are. But Build Back Better, John, is already becoming Build Back Smaller in the end.
You know, it was really remarkable listening to the things that Jen Psaki had to say on this from the White House yesterday. Brett Baer was sitting here with us when we were listening to this live. And for one, to say the president's been working on this for months, well, what does that say about where things are today? Because it seems like it's only gotten worse, right, Bill? But then she also talked about, on these supply chain issues, the president working around the clock with these task forces. It seems like there's a task force for just about everything. Here was more from Psaki yesterday, Bill.
The president has, the supply chain task force has been working around the clock for months and months now to address a range of different issues that we see in the supply chain.
Well, maybe it would help to just get out of the way, right, Bill? Well, I mean, let businesses operate, let them get people back to work. But a lot of these policies implemented by this White House is what is stopping folks from getting back to work.
Well, you're in the business of news, and so are you, John, and so am I. I could not name the leader of this task force, and I don't even know who's on it. And I reached out to Peter Doocy a short time ago, and he said, yeah, they have talked about it many months ago, but it really flew under the radar. And they've briefed about it a few times in the briefing room. But I would venture to bet 9 out of 10 people on the sidewalk would not be able to even know, if not higher, that there was a task force that was involved. A couple quick anecdotes for you. You're talking to William Lajeunesse out in California. We have a shortage of 60,000 truck drivers in America today. Think about that. You want to move this cargo? It's not even going to happen because you don't have the drivers to be able to do it. On America's Newsroom earlier today, we found an 18-year-old high school student from New Jersey who's now in school to be a long-haul trucker. I said, you got a job? He said, no, I have a career. But that's where we're reaching now as a country for this. Another thought here. If you were president, this is a headline you do not want from Reuters yesterday. Quote, there will be things that people can't get at Christmas, White House warns. You don't want that kind of publicity. The third thing I say is, how well have we been trained now as consumers to go online and buy your Christmas gifts when you want? And that website says to receive by 12/23 or to receive by 12/24, you must order by X date. Well, all that stuff is up in the air right now as we approach the holiday season. The head of Goldman Sachs today said that inflation is now his biggest concern. A month ago, our Fox polling went out to find out how people feel about inflation. 82% of the people we surveyed said they were very concerned or extremely concerned. That was mid-September. Now we're in mid-October, and the focus on this issue has grown larger, and the acute need on this has grown even stronger now.
You know, Bill, the Consumer Price Index was up 5.4% in September, which is troubling. And then when you take a look at those pictures that we just showed of shelves empty, it looks like the bad old days of the Soviet Union. I mean, obviously, during this pandemic, we had some shortages earlier on, mostly paper products. toilet paper, paper towels. You couldn't get hand sanitizer anywhere. But now that's spread to so many different products. It's literally across the board. How is all of this going to play politically this November 2nd in some gubernatorial races, and then a year from November in the midterms?
Yeah, well, we'll see whether or not they can solve this, and if so, when that happens. You know, John and Sandra, I talk a lot about images. I think a lot about images over the past couple of months, and I think about the C-17 cargo plane rolling down the runway in Kabul, and I think about the cargo ships off the coast of Los Angeles, stacked one after the other. It's never happened that way before, and now the image you have on screen is of empty shelves. The White House did not want it to go this way. I believe what they would argue is that several months ago they could stop this, but indeed we have seen quite clearly now that they have been unable to do that. And the images stick in the minds of Americans and clearly in the minds of voters.
You've taken a big picture, Bill. We've seen the drop in the president's approval ratings, and specifically with the economy, it continues to go down. It's at a record low for his presidency. Fast forward, midterm elections, what is the impact?
Well, you know, a lot of attention has been given to that Quinnipiac poll from about a week ago, and I think the most important and relevant information in that poll is among independent voters. Yep. And just historically, in 2010, when the Republicans swept the House, and by the way, no one predicted they'd win 63 House seats. They won independents that year by 19 points. That's who decides these elections. In 2018, Joe Biden won the same group of voters by about 10 points. In 2020, it was about 11 points, so about the same number there. Independents, as they look at this administration right now, on so many critical categories, have ranked them greater than 60% on the disapproval level. And what you're showing now does not hurt those numbers going the other direction. If I were in the West Wing, I would be very concerned about how these people today are feeling about how this administration is governing the country.
Well, if they can't fix it, they can always start to play the blame game, though difficult to know who you're going to blame for this one. Bill, great to see you. We'll see you back again tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Sandra.
Bill,
Good to be with you.
Thank you.